The night after the battle, the field was silent. Thousands of British soldiers lay dead beneath the shadow of a lonely mountain. Their rifles were scattered across the grass, their red coats stained with dust and blood. And standing victorious over them were warriors carrying shields and spears. The most powerful empire on earth had come to Africa expecting an easy victory. Instead, it suffered one of the worst defeats in its colonial history. This is the story of the Battle of Isandlwana. The day the Zulu kingdom shocked the world. It was January 1879. The British Empire controlled vast territories across the globe. Its armies had conquered nations on nearly every continent. To many Europeans, British military power seemed unstoppable. But in southern Africa stood a kingdom that refused to submit. The Zulu kingdom. Founded and strengthened by leaders such as Shaka Zulu, the Zulu nation had grown into one of Africa's most powerful states. Its warriors were feared throughout the region. Its military discipline was legendary. And its king, Cetshwayo campaigned, ruled over tens of thousands of experienced fighters. The British saw the Zulu kingdom as an obstacle to their plans in southern Africa. They wanted control. The Zulu wanted independence. War became inevitable. In January 1879, British forces crossed into Zululand. Their commanders believed the campaign would be short. They expected the Zulus to break under the firepower of modern rifles and artillery. After all, what chance did warriors armed mainly with spears have against one of the most advanced armies in the world? That assumption would prove disastrous. The British invasion force was divided into several columns. One of the largest was led by Lord Chelmsford. His troops established a camp near a distinctive mountain known as Isandlwana. The mountain rose dramatically from the landscape, its shape visible for miles. Yet despite being in enemy territory, the camp was vulnerable. No defensive trenches were dug. No protective walls were built. The British believed their superior weapons made such precautions unnecessary. Meanwhile, something extraordinary was happening beyond the hills. A massive Zulu army was gathering. Nearly 20,000 warriors had assembled. They moved with remarkable discipline and secrecy. Many had marched for days. They carried the traditional stabbing spear known as the kua, along with large cowhide shields. Some also possessed firearms, though most relied on their traditional weapons. The Zulu commanders understood that they could not win by attacking recklessly. Instead, they would use tactics perfected over generations. The famous horns of the buffalo formation. The center would engage the enemy directly. To flanking forces, the horns would sweep around both sides. Their goal was simple: surround the enemy completely, then destroy them. On the morning of January 22, 1879, disaster began to unfold. Lord Chelmsford believed the main Zulu force was elsewhere. Taking a large portion of his troops, he marched away from the camp in search of the enemy. What he did not realize was that the main Zulu army was hidden nearby. The camp at Isandlwana was left dangerously exposed. Around midday, British scouts unexpectedly discovered the Zulu warriors. Thousands of them. Suddenly, the Zulu army rose from the grass-covered valleys where it had been concealed. One witness described the sight as if the earth itself had opened and released an army. Warriors began advancing across the landscape. The attack had begun. At first, the British appeared confident. Their riflemen formed firing lines. As the Zulus approached, volleys of gunfire erupted. Warriors fell. Then more fell. The British rifles were deadly. Each burst of fire tore gaps into the advancing ranks. For a moment, it seemed the invasion force might survive. But the Zulus kept coming. Again and again. Across open ground. Through smoke and gunfire. The warriors displayed extraordinary courage. Many knew they were charging directly into rifle fire. Yet they continued advancing. The Zulu horns slowly stretched outward, almost unnoticed at first, then increasingly obvious. The encirclement had begun. As the battle intensified, problems emerged for the British. Their firing lines were spread too far apart. Communication became difficult. Ammunition distribution started breaking down. Units became isolated from one another. Meanwhile, the Zulu warriors pressed closer, closer, and closer still. Then came the moment every British soldier feared. The Zulus reached them. The battle transformed instantly. This was no longer a long-range firefight. It became hand-to-hand combat. Spears clashed against bayonets. Warriors surged through gaps in the lines. The British formation began to collapse. The Zulu horns wrapped around both flanks. Soon, soldiers found enemies in front of them, beside them, and behind them. The camp was surrounded. Panic spread. Some British troops attempted to form defensive positions. Others fought desperately where they stood. Officers tried to rally their men, but the Zulu attack was relentless. Wave after wave of warriors poured into the camp. The battlefield became chaos. Dust filled the air. Gunshots echoed across the plain. War cries mixed with screams. Men fought for survival amid a storm of violence. Despite overwhelming odds, many British soldiers resisted fiercely. Small groups made last stands. Some fought until their ammunition ran out. Others fixed bayonets and faced the advancing warriors. But courage alone could not stop the encirclement. The Zulu army had achieved exactly what it intended. The British force was trapped, and it was being destroyed. By late afternoon, the battle was over. The camp had fallen. The British defeat was catastrophic. More than 1,300 British and colonial troops were killed. Entire units ceased to exist. Weapons, ammunition, and supplies were captured. The Zulu victory was one of the greatest military achievements in African history. The battlefield was covered with the evidence of a stunning upset. An army representing the world's most powerful empire had been defeated by African warriors using skill, discipline, leadership, and determination. News of the disaster spread rapidly. When reports reached Britain, many people could hardly believe them. How could this have happened? How could a force equipped with modern rifles lose to warriors armed largely with spears? The answer was simple. Technology alone does not win battles. Leadership matters. Discipline matters. Strategy matters. And at Isandlwana, the Zulu army demonstrated all three. The victory, however, came at a heavy cost. Thousands of Zulu warriors were killed or wounded during the fighting. Their triumph had been earned through immense sacrifice. And despite the victory, the war was far from over. The British Empire was determined to restore its reputation. More troops would arrive. The conflict would continue. Eventually, the Zulu kingdom would be defeated later that year. But nothing could erase what happened at Isandlwana. Ending today, the Battle of Isandlwana remains one of the most remarkable battles of the 19th century. It stands as a reminder that history is filled with moments when the seemingly impossible becomes reality. On that January day in 1879, the British Empire expected another easy conquest. Instead, it encountered an opponent it had underestimated. The warriors of the Zulu kingdom fought with courage, discipline, and tactical brilliance. And beneath the shadow of Isandlwana Mountain, they achieved a victory that stunned the world. More than a century later, the story still echoes across the hills of South Africa. A story of resistance, a story of determination, and a story of the day an African kingdom humbled an empire.